All right, great. Hey, Lee, thanks, or Lynn, thanks for agreeing to hop on this conversation. Was just too good to not have captured. Um, you're someone that I respect very much. The way that you conduct yourself and inquire and the way that you're always there for all of your friends. Um, you're just a really solid and reliable and intelligent man, and I've just always respected you for that, and always appreciate your inquiry because it always makes me think in ways that I never thought before.
Thank you.
So really, it's your line of questioning that had me decide to hit the record button on this because I found this conversation. It's rare that I have the opportunity to really dive into a fun conversation like this. So just lead off with to pick up where we left off moments ago with our conversation. So we were talking about marriage and having kids, and I think the best way to raise um, to raise a child.
Right. So to start off, we were asking each other the question of the construct of having marriage. Was that important in a child's life? I had no idea until moments ago that you are a father of a daughter. So why don't you share your answers first, so that way we can pick up where we left off.
Yeah. So what I said was that I felt it was important for the child to have two parents that were you specifically asked if I thought it was important to have a family, and I said yes, and then if it was important for them to be married, and then you asked the question um, if that was legally or if it was sufficient to have a life partner. And what I was saying was, I believe it's important that you have the commitment, that commitment to be in a life bond with someone, um, and that it's not so much the marriage certificate, but it's the I think a lot of people in this day and age is there's so many people out there now, and we have access to so many men and women that it seems easier, I think, sometimes to get a divorce and to separate than
I think the word you use were get out of jail free.
yeah, to get a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
So what I said was, I believe that when you speak something into existence, that's what has it exist. So for me, what I believe is important is making that commitment amongst what I would call your tribe, which is those that are closest to you. So getting up in front of them and making that commitment, not so much the papers that you get from the government, but that spoken word, because I think ultimately the best case scenario is that your tribe is what supports you. Your tribe is using your tribe to raise the children together is
Yeah.
what's important.
And I
And
thought that, go ahead, finish.
when you speak that commitment to your tribe, then um, you're speaking that in their listening. You're making that promise to them, to those who matter most. Now, inside of this, I believe that part of that is that by them being there, being willing to listen to that they're agreeing that you two are a good match.
Mm,
That they're agreeing that, I mean, in an ideal place where we would speak truthfully to each other.
yeah, for sure. And I thought that was a very powerful distinction that you made. Well, one, you're speaking, you're making a declaration, you're committing to each other, but also in their listening of this particular declaration and the implicit um, promise that they're making for you is they're listen to this declaration to fulfill, to be fulfilled, right? I think part of the powerful you know, we're part of a men's group. I'm part of um, the ceremony. Part of the rituals that we do is we actually get vetted by our inner tribe and say, hey, I'm about to make this declaration to the partner and making a lifelong commitment. Are there any things that I don't see? You know, do you feel like I'm qualified to actually make that commitment? And then in that ritual, they can then give you the truth, right, without any kind of sugarcoating, or just, you know, give you that truth to you in a very direct way. And what I'm hearing you say about the whole wedding ceremony is now you're making that declaration beyond your trusted circle to even a bigger tribe.
Yeah. And and even to your, depending on how large your tribe is, right? It's those that you keep around you the closest on an ongoing basis, that when times get tough, that they're going to be there to support you. You know, inside of, there's a lot of distinctions that I really agree with inside of the men's work that we do. And one of those things is, I believe that it's important for a man to have his men and for a woman to have her women, and that the quality of a man's men and the quality of a woman's women says a lot about the character and the readiness of that particular individual. So when you have that, um, when things get rough, you're not. I think it's one of the things that couples lose sight of, is that it's not just between them. It's not. They're not going to necessarily figure it out alone, that they need to go outside of their marriage to their tribe, right? And that's, you know, where it's important to have that kind of distinguished ahead of time, right? Because, um, that you trust in each other's committed listeners, so to speak, right? And that you go to them and you speak with them what it is that you're dealing with. And as a tribe, you can work through these more difficult issues so that you can come back to your partner having resolved things, rather than trying to, um, I don't know, I think two people can have conflicting views. And sometimes when you get used to someone, it's difficult to communicate what you really want to communicate, because you have different ways of communicating. By going to your community and engaging in that conversation and hearing the wisdom, and then coming back, that you can really, you learn anew, like, oh, okay, that wasn't really crazy. I really am, you know, messed up about that. I actually have a perfect example. There's a man in our community who's married with kids, and he was raising a daughter, and she was in high school, and they have a senior skip day. And he was like, oh hell no, you are not skipping. I don't care, no matter what. That's it. Period. Dot. The end. And she really threw a fit, like, Dad, all seniors do this. And so he's like, all right, I'm gonna call 5 of my men, and whatever answer I get back, like whatever determination I get back, is will be the decision. And so sure enough, he went and he conversed with 5 of his men, and all of his men explained to him the importance as a senior, that, senior skip day actually is like a rite of passage, and actually is like really important to those in school. And so he came back and he's like, okay, I agree. Now here are the stipulations, right? There were, um, I don't remember what they were. They were pretty obvious to me about, not getting in trouble or whatever. But the fact that he was willing to change his mind because his perception of the situation was limited by his experience, but he was willing to go to his men to get an alternate perspective. And that has stood out for me ever since then. The importance of getting that second opinion.
Yeah. I mean, we're in our own world. We have our own view. You know, I see you through the lens of my eyes, right?
Yeah,
So it's impossible for me to see 360, all different degrees. It needs to be an outside perspective that allow me to see my own blind spots, because often others who are outside of us have a more objective view, right? So I think having a community, a trusted circle to give you that objective view from an outsider point of view is really critical, not just in the marriage state. I mean, for sure, this is what we're talking about. But in my mind, Confucius said self-mastery, family, country, world starts with the self, right? So you can then reflect back to me the truth that you see I exhibit, and also be able to risk our friendship in order to serve my highest truth.
It's really interesting. I think that doing your own work is what allows you to grow to a certain capacity to have the kind of confidence and inner what would you call it? Just a groundedness to be willing to, like you said, put that friendship up on the line. We talked a little bit earlier about what we call being qualified to be married, and it can be tough to tell, someone that you're close to, I don't think you're ready, or I think you're doing this because like I can see you trying to fill a void, trying to do it as a way to escape something, or whatever, or this particular person that you've chosen really isn't a good fit. This is someone who is feeding your addictions rather than your commitments. And especially when we're in love, there's that chemical, and we don't want to listen to anybody else, or I think that it can be really tough to try to tell somebody, someone that you really care about and love, no, this isn't a good fit, which I think is key to choosing your tribe wisely.
Mm-hmm. I mean, going further, we hear a lot, we're the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with, or, our culture, our environment dictates our future. If you want a different future, choose a different environment, right? Certainly there's a place for self-determination, uh, self-will, all these things for sure, because we always make our own choice. At the same time, I think a lot of the times we forget how easily influenced we are by our environment. So I think choosing the right people you want to travel, you want to journey with in this life journey is hugely important. And I think thinking back on the cliche of, from my parents, I don't know about your parents, but they always say, hey, choose your friends wisely.
Yeah.
That has so much wisdom behind just those 3 words, choose your friends wisely.
Yeah, I don't think I've truly been able to unpack that or extrapolate that until now. Um, it's so true. We as a tribe, for those of us who hang out together, who spend a lot of time together, engage a lot of conversation together, we encourage each other. One on the same wavelength, so our encouragement is to level up. But I think there are moments where you can get into the kind of relationship where an addictive relationship where it's they're trying to keep you down. And there's a really powerful distinction actually from landmark education, and it's that not only is it your inner community, right, which is a big thing, but it's also a network of conversations. So the conversations that you're having with those people and those around you. So there's an interesting exercise to look at what is your most frequent, I'm probably screwing this up, but what is your most frequent conversation with those around you? What is the conversation you're having the most? And that conversation that you're having is what you're keeping in persistence, that you're persisting in your life. So if you're having a conversation with everyone around you about how broke you are, or how poor you are, or like, woe is me, whatever that is, then you're actually keeping that experience in existence because you're keeping that conversation in existence. So
Interesting.
one of the things that I try to look at is when I get into these conversations, because sometimes, we, have a tendency to complain about something or um, need to vent, and that kind of thing. So what I look for is this a commitment to complain, or is this a commitment to alter something? And I believe it's possible to communicate something that you're dealing with a commitment to get it off your chest and move on, or with a commitment to try to come to some kind of resolution. Like, here's what I'm dealing with. I'm still out of work. It's really tough. I'm really dealing with this. I don't know what to do. Let's engage in a conversation.
What's the intent behind the words you're saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And is the intent to complain or to move something forward?
Yeah.
And I
I
think
th-
they're very different.
yeah, I think you hear these, it's interesting, you hear these like self-help books to have just a recommendation, and then people try to adhere it to just the superficial meanings of the word. I think part of the four agreements, one of the agreement is don't complain, don't say negative things, right? And that actually will go against to the thing you just share about. So if you just look at that recommendation at the surface level, then you say basically try to swallow or suppress or repress whatever negative emotion that's happening.
Yeah.
But I think part of the process of getting complete or getting integrated with what you're dealing with is to talk about it, to let it out, journaling, talk about it with the intent of actually tease or unpack
Yeah.
the noise and actually find the signal, the nuggets that's hidden underneath all of those layers of morass.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's a slippery slope, because I think I think it's important to have the experience of being heard. I think that's one of the most, if not the most important thing to getting complete around something. And what I mean by getting complete is having the experience of something that's bothering you be resolved, not just temporarily, but permanently. Whether it be a trauma of some kind, or a conversation, or an experience. Um, and I think part of that, the most important thing, is the experience of being heard, and really having the experience that everything that you're saying is okay, that you're, I'm, you know, listening is a whole skill, a whole technique that goes, I mean, it could be studied, I believe, for a lifetime without ever reaching your maximum listening potential. I believe that when you're truly authentically present with someone in such a way, you can actually hear what's not being said. You can experience what they're experiencing. You're almost in their body, in their experience. And the more you can connect like that, the more you can have them experience being heard. And often that's enough. Um, but you can get to a point where you're so comfortable with that you want to get their like agreement that it's horrible, or that the circumstances are unfair, and so you kind of keep going back to that and keep bringing up the same thing. So it really is, like we discussed a moment ago, I think it really is your intention to get complete. Like, okay, CK, I'm in the middle of of this job thing. I'm really upset. I just need to come and clear with you really quick so that I can just let it go and go back to and just be my strongest self, right?
Mm.
Um, and actually have it disappear and not bring it back up again.
Hmm. In the ceremonial work, shamanic work, that I've experienced, I didn't quite get it in the beginning, but I think the same metaphor applies here, right? Or what you just share applies to that physical metaphor there. Part of the process in doing, let's say ayahuasca or combo and things like that, is actually quite violent because physiologically you're purging something through crying or yawning or stretching or some kind of release, or literally top purge or bottom purge, right? And on the surface, if you just read the words, it's really bizarre, really dubious. Like, why would anyone want to go through that experience to purge? But having been through that experience myself, it's completely liberating. Mm, it's very cathartic, because it's one thing to let a thought go in your mind. It's another to actually physically see something coming out of you. Like, oh, okay, I finally let that go. So that is a symbolism of physically letting go of something. So I think the words, hey, I'm about to share this with you with the intention of, purging or letting go. It's one way to do it. Another way to do it beautifully is, things like ayahuasca, kambo, things like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I want to bring back to tribe and community, because I think that was the conversation thread that we were on. When you, when you're in the middle of a conflict with your partner, we stand in the place of self-righteousness. My point of view is correct. Your point of view is wrong.
Yeah.
It is so easy, especially at the height of the conflict, to go to a place of saying, this person must not love me. If she loves me, she would not do the stuff or say the stuff that harms me, right? So that is so easy to just let that go, that seed of love, let it go, dismiss that in the height of conflict. I loved one of this relationship coaches, Annie Lala. She said, during those times, remember the mantra, she loves me, she loves me, she loves me. So when you hear the words of vitriol, bitterness, resentment, anger, like, don't ever let that core belief go. Because when that core belief, when that's shaky, when there's, inkling of doubt that she loves me, and it's so easy to just go down the downward spiral of, now you have fissure, now you have, within this third entity, right? This marriage that you are co-creating together. So to your point earlier about having a tribe, so not only so then you can now rely on your tribe to remind you of that,
Yeah.
to
Not
help you
only
anchor
not
that.
only to remind you of that, but to help bring you back to reality. I think there's a very large degree to which, as individuals, we don't live in reality. I think there's some biological human phenomena about, if you don't see it, if it's not tangible, it doesn't exist, right? I think that's one of the things about this COVID thing that is really tough for people, right? You have the people who are like, oh, it's a hoax, it doesn't really exist, and those are, I can only assume, people who where this virus isn't really impacting them. They don't see anyone around them who've had the virus. They don't see a hospital packed with people. And then on the drastic other side, you have doctors and nurses in hospitals who are just being broken down to tears because they're literally having to deal with death on a mass casualty. So it's so because of that, I think that, and I don't know that there's anything we can do to alter this, really. I don't know if we'll ever, I think the more that we educate ourselves and journal and communicate, that the better we can take action around things that we don't believe are there. If that makes sense. So I believe that having that, our tribe, having a community is a good way to bring things into reality, because our lenses are always filtered. So my perception is completely different than yours based on my past and the way that I view things. And my reality may be that I'm worthless, and I'm just a bump on a log, and I don't produce any results. And your view of me may be that I'm a man of my word. I'm stand up in the community, and I'm I'm worth my weight in gold. Whose reality is right? Well, if you're being truthful, which is what I would expect from my men and from my tribe, you are, because your view is based external to me, and mine is based on my own thoughts and feelings about how I think things are.
Which are very fleeting.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And often based from my experience and emotions from the past versus what's actually happening right now.
Okay, so let's inquire about that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, how do you ensure that you? So there's many different ways I can ask this question. How do you ensure that you subjective you listen to the feedback that your community gives you, in spite of your inner resistance, your egoic reaction to
Yeah.
what they tell you?
CK, I honestly do not have a good answer for you. It's something I've struggled with my whole life. And honestly, this is one of the most profound lessons I got from the men's weekend was having my men. Before the men's weekend, I didn't really trust men. And so I always went at everything alone. And I certainly never trusted what other men external to me, would say to me if it had to do with my own character. Over the last, let's see, I did the men's week in October of 2017. So since then, I've been on, some purpose-driven teams in our men's circle, and I've found, what I would call my men, which is, a circle of, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 men, whatever, who I consider to be very close. They're stand-up men like yourself, and others who I consider to be stand-up, honorable, up to something in life, always striving to be best, always challenging themselves and others, kind of the cool kids, if you will. And up until, we're 2020, so it was this last cycle, so it's been 17 to 18, 19, so about 2.5 years doing the men's work that I've been with these men. And I've always kept them at an arm's distance, because my experience was, as soon as you get to know the real me and you see my flaws, you won't want to hang out with me. I mean, because, for the longest time, it's like, I don't get why these men would actually want, they'll call me out of the blue. I'll be like, all right, what do you need? I'm like, nothing. I'm having a glass of bourbon, and I thought of you. Like, I'm out here having a glass of bourbon and cigar, dude. What's up? I'm like, it's like, why would you call me? So I always had that experience, like I needed to show up some certain way in order to have that.
Some character, some value you got to provide.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I could never hear what they were saying about me, because it always came from like, well, yeah, if you only knew who I really was. And it's exhausting. And I could only spend a certain amount of time, because I could only carry that front for a certain amount of time before one of my flaws shows up, right? So it was this last, so we have, as you know, we have a training program inside of our circle. There's a training program where we train new men who come out of the men's weekend, and it's a leadership program, and um, one of the most powerful things I've ever done. And as a trainer in that program, I'm leading with these men who I consider my men, and I was not asking for help because I was fairly new to the program and didn't know some of the traditions on how to engage in these specific conversations, what some of the logistics were, things like that. So I was trying to figure it out on my own. And I finally just realized that I was failing because I was unwilling to ask for help.
Mm.
So I went to one of my men and I was like, I mean, I was kind of at my wit's end, and I just let it spill. I was just like, I don't trust that if you get to know the real me that you're going to stick around, and you're
Mm.
no longer going to want to invest in training me and in being around and standing for me and being one of my men.
Mm.
And he said what he said, and one of the pieces of his advice was to be authentic and to share that with my men.
Mm.
And I did. It was one of the most difficult things I ever did.
Mm.
And through that and some other experiences, I let that go, and I've just really been raw and authentic with my men.
Mm.
And something shifted for me in that moment. That I was like, all right, you'll see. You're all gonna leave. You're all gonna, whatever, and kick me out. And I noticed my mind always creating that after that happened, like creating where something would get said, and my mind would be like, oh, see, there's the truth. It's happening.
Mm.
And just out of actions, they would always prove me wrong. Not thinking about it, but just they're always just there for me.
Mm.
And finally, after I think it's been almost a year since that happened, I now, without a doubt, trust my men and what
Mm.
they say to me and about me.
Mm.
And so, there's still the ego and the challenges that, day to day, right? I would say as a percentage, it's an 80%. I'm still battling with my ego. I'm human, right? But the majority of the time, if my men say something about me, I believe it.
Mm.
And it's been a long road. I'm 43. I'm going to be 44 in July.
Mm.
I've done a lot of transformational work, and always committed to leveling up. And it's been a long time, and
Mm.
I'm just now starting to peel that first layer of the onion back.
Mm. Mm.
So, long story short, I'm not sure I could give you a specific answer on how you do that.
Yeah. And it's not so much in a specific answer I'm inquiring. It's more about hearing the journey, and you answer it perfectly. So thank you.
Yeah,
And I really just appreciate how willing you are to, get real, right, on a public forum like this. And I would say, for myself, that struggle with self-doubt, has been the source with a lot of my pursuit for results, for achievement, for degrees, for titles, for accolades. And what I realized, I'm 41. So what I realized after having been alive for 40 years on this planet and having, 15, 20 years of experience on this journey, personal and professional development, I realized it comes down to what you said earlier. It sounds so simple, which is be authentic, be yourself, right? Know thyself. So easy to say, so simple to say, but at the same time, it's really not about adding on more knowledge or expertise or achievements. To me, when I work with someone who is free, who is fulfilled, they're just being themselves. Uh, what's the American phrase? Warts and all, right?
yeah,
Embracing all aspects of who they are, their proudest moments, their biggest accomplishments, or world class results, and also their full humanity. because in my mind, now that I'm 41, I have a little bit more distance from my younger self.
Yeah.
Um, it's embrace all of it. And when you say level up, that to me is what it means to level up, like to really embrace all aspects of who I am. And interesting enough, when I am able to do that more on a moment to moment basis, uh, more people come to me for help, which is interesting. Because in my younger days, I would say when I have more skills, more mastery, more achievements, but still have that acting from a shiny veneer aspect, right? Hey, look at me, I'm awesome, right? And somehow that doesn't actually attract my kind of people to come to me. And the way that I see it right now is if I'm just truly be who I am more and more every day without needing, right, that neediness of validation or approval from others, and more people who are like me show up, such as yourself, right?
Yeah. Awesome.
What did you hear in what I said?
Uh, it's all about the journey, not about arriving.
Yeah, I think arrival is you breathe your last breath and you're done. Your joyride of human experience is over.
Yeah. Well,
That's
and,
that's arriving.
for those who believe in the afterlife or who believe in anything beyond death, that's even that is only a part of the journey.
Hmm. And I think going back to what we originally started, uh, family unit, our tribes, ultimately to me, when because I work with people all the time, they like to use words like abundance and wealth. And I think for me, my new definition of wealth beyond monetary is the wealth of rich experiences, rich exchanges that I have, such as this. That's what makes my life meaningful and fulfilling and rich. So thank you for creating those moments with me here.
Oh, you're welcome. I always appreciate our conversations. It's always great to dive into these subjects, and I think this is part of choosing your tribe wisely. There's a time and a place to talk about video games and your favorite TV shows, and it's also important to surround yourself with those to pick. I believe that we pick our tribe and we choose our tribe. So whoever it is that's around you right now, you've chosen them to be in your circle. Whether you think you have, whether you feel like you're a victim of, or whatever, to some degree, everything that's in your life, we've chosen that. So I think it's incredibly important to choose your surroundings carefully, and it's such an honor and a privilege to have you as one of my men to be able to engage in these conversations. Gets me keeps me thinking, keeps me sharp, and challenges too. Are I don't know about for you, but for me, my opinions always and thoughts always sound great in my head. And my points of view and the way that I think about things, they always sound just top notch. But when you actually have to articulate and explain to someone else, they either become sharper and you develop some comfort and some strength in your beliefs, and some security, that we are one, or you begin to realize that your thoughts don't hold any weight, and that it's an opportunity to dig your heels in the sand and um, ignore the new view, or to really look at, wow, okay, let me rethink that. And that's one of the reasons why, some of my favorite men, or human beings really, but Werner Erhard and Joe Rogan is a favorite of mine. And there's just some of those that really are critical thinkers that are willing to have their minds changed.
So
Just
say more about that, actually.
Peterson is another one.
Jordan Peterson, yeah.
Jordan Peterson, yeah, he's another one of my favorites. He always comes to a conversation willing to be wrong, and he bases his thoughts on facts. And I've heard him say before, this is not my area of expertise. I can give you my opinion, but it's only worth my thoughts because I haven't done the research. And he's willing to be proven wrong.
So anything else about these three people that you mentioned, Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, and Warner Earhart, what about them compel you to want to listen to them? Other than, so one, you mentioned willingness to be wrong. Anything else?
Perceive them based on how I've seen them show up in the world is they're always in the inquiry. They're always in the inquiry. So they'll come up with an idea, they'll express it, they'll share it, they'll teach it. And then in that process, it's one of my favorite things from Jordan Peterson. He's like, he'll get up on stage and say, okay, I'm here tonight because I'm trying to I'm trying to work this idea out. So I'm going to deliver this. He's basically like, I'm going to deliver this to you. Let's work it out together because I'm not entirely sure, but this is how I see it. And like I said a few moments ago, it's in that interaction, it's in that speaking, the articulating, that your brain is able to make these connections and put things together. And either they are how they had seemed or they're not. And being able to interact and get that feedback. Warner Earhart is another one where, he did EST and then landmark education, and a lot of things that I've seen in some of his talks or people who have interacted with him. He'll come out with a distinction or something that he believes, and then he'll teach it. And then 6 months or a year or whatever, sometimes he'll come back later and he'll say, you know what, I was wrong. This is actually how I see it now. But that's, who do you have to be so certain of something to deliver that and teach that like it's your truth for a year or years, and then come to the realization that what you've been teaching is not accurate, and come back out and say, you know what, I was wrong. This is what I see now. That takes something. And it's that willingness. Nobody has like the ultimate right answer. No one's perfect. And everything changes at a moment by moment to daily basis. So the willingness to acknowledge our humanity and to be humble enough to say, hey, I was wrong. Like this, this is now what I see. Take it or leave it, but this is what I see. There's just something really honorable about that. And I see all three of those men really striving to do their best and striving to get to, I don't know why the word truth rubs me the wrong way. I don't want to use that word, but I don't know what other word to use.
I think what you're speaking about, I'm just trying to contextualize this a little bit, not speaking your truth for you, but I think, is it relative truth, personal truth versus absolute truth with a capital T? Is that why this thing rubs you the wrong way?
Yeah, I think maybe it's because truth maybe can be a moving target. So maybe it's maybe the best word is like a current truth or a present truth, right? Joe Rogan again is one of them, because his inquiry, you know, he does quite a bit of research prior to having someone come on his show.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I know, right?
He does research? He's
Yeah.
not like Larry King and just kind of wing it on the moment, in the moment.
No, he does a lot of, he comes educated.
Mm,
And so, which first of all, to me says something about a person, um, that they're willing to show up, um, having done the research themselves
mm.
or having come from experience themselves versus just, you know, kind of being the, what is it? The, just being in the stands, being in the
Mhm.
stands, or at home, you're yelling at the TV or you're yelling from the stands what the players should do versus the players actually on the field in the middle of it, right? So, you know, Joe Rogan does a lot of research when he comes to those, and he may have formed an opinion, but the questions that he asks are so inquisitive. Like, well, this is what I think based on the research that I've done and what I've seen. This is what makes sense to me. What are your thoughts on this?
Mhm.
And then engage in a conversation about that to, um, you know, I don't know that they ever come to an absolute truth, right? But they seem to drill down to something tangible, something that's valuable, um, versus versus the assumptions. And the other thing is that you know, they're always willing to be in a conversation with someone of the opposite opinion,
Mm.
which I feel is something that's really missing in this day and age. You know, there was a time, at least from my own personal experience, that it occurred to me growing up that there was a time when two people from the opposite sides of the fence would sit down at a table and argue it out, and at the end, you know, shake hands and come out, um, both opinions having been altered. Maybe they don't change sides, right? But they were willing to hear the other, and they came out with a different point of view in one way or another because they were willing to hear out the other person. And I think that's so important, you know, versus shutting down someone who has another point of view.
Mhm.
I think it's important to really drill down and dig into, um, what, you know, why do you think that way? Where did you get that information? Or, you know, if it's factual, like, you know, I would like to read that same article as well. How did you come across that point of view? I think it's important.
Mhm. You know, you mentioned an interesting observation. You said these three people are teachers, and two of them they do have titles of author and teacher. You know, Warren Earhart and Jordan Peterson, but one person does not. One person, Joe Rogan, he's a professional comedian. Why do you see him as a teacher?
Hmm. You know, I didn't actually say that, but the but I'm glad that you said that, because I can get, I would actually put him in that category. Um, I think honestly the best teachers are the ones who teach you how to think for yourself,
Mm,
how to inquire and do the looking and thinking. You know, here's my point of view. You know, here's the book that I read to get these facts. This is where my thoughts come from. This is where my opinions come from. This is the video I watched. This is and this is why I've come to that conclusion based on my 20, 30 years of psychological, you know, evaluations from, you know, from actually being in the room on the court from people. I've found that this or this. And Joe Rogan, I feel, is similar to that because his form of questioning and his willing to be open and be in a discussion with anybody about any subject, um, I feel gives us all the intrigue and the openness to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things too that I feel like he's willing to say that a lot of other people are not willing to say, which I think is important, to be able to be authentic, as we've said earlier. And I think that sometimes authenticity, we spoke a bit earlier about clearing, right? Like speaking something, in order to get complete about something, and all of this could be unpacked for days, right? But part of that in being truthful to another person, for example, being honest about one of your men or one of your women, and in who or how they are, how they're showing up, if they're being in such a way that doesn't work. I think that there's two ways of going about it. One is more of like a word vomit, which really, people can use as an opportunity to just get off their chest how they feel about somebody, or that time that they did them wrong, or the thing, or the whatever, versus really like stopping and being responsible for the communication and how that communication lands over there with the other person. You can't control whether they're going to be upset or not, but you can be responsible enough with your communication to deliver the communication in an intelligent way, that hopefully will land in a way that they'll actually chew on it for a bit, versus like the human reaction when somebody says something we don't like, which is to get defensive. Because when someone gets defensive, there's no benefit in that. There's no, it doesn't forward the conversation. It doesn't help either human being.
Well,
So
it does have a temporary relief, but with the longer term vomit, like, because
yeah,
the moment you vomit, it feels good for a moment, but then you leave vomit everywhere.
yeah,
Everyone who's hearing a vomit. So
yeah,
the net in my mind is not to vomit.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Um. Okay, so from this is your podcast, but it's so interesting. So I was having a conversation with a professor the other day, my old professor back in grad school,
Yeah.
in just a regular conversation. I was just catching up, and he said to me afterwards, "Man, I feel like I'm being interviewed for something." I'm saying, like, I'm sorry, this is part of who I am. I'm curious, I ask questions. So I need to be really cognizant about, um, my conversations with people, because at times, even my sisters-in-law, they're intimidated because, my lines of questions are very direct and then very probing.
Yeah.
When people are not ready for it, it may feel a little bit too revealing or too direct. So
Yeah. I love it. I think it's great. I think first of all, anybody who's known you for more than 2 minutes, really can get your authenticity and where these questions are coming from. You have a level of curiosity and intrigue, much like a monk. You occur for me like a monk,
mm,
if not in this lifetime, in a past lifetime. Um, you just have this very it's just authentic and inquisitive nature about you, that you just kind of want to open things up and see, like, for knowledge, for the good of understanding, for your own growth and development. So it's one of the things that I really appreciate you, actually, is your questions, because they're um, I don't know about for anybody else, but for me, really gets me thinking about things that I don't normally get to talk about or formulate in conversation.
yeah. Thank you. I received that.
Yeah.
You know, part of my journey of podcasting for now 70 episodes plus
Wow.
with my second podcast in a public forum,
Yeah.
it's interesting how I'm able to articulate my own truth, right? My occurring truth with more precision because I've said certain things many different angles, many different ways to many different people. Now, first and foremost, it's more clear for me, like where do I stand
Yeah.
regarding whatever topics or mental models, and then clearly deliver to my guests, to my audience members. So that is personally very satisfying to actually be able to deliver with the level of precision that I want to land it the way that I want to land, rather than a shotgun approach of whatever comes out of my mouth and you get whatever you get on your end.
What from this call so far? What have you know for yourself? What's this conversation opened up for you, or what are some of your points of view that you see?
Yeah, I think the importance of having the tribe of my own choosing such that they can reflect back to me my truth as well as my bullshit, as well as my blind spots, right? And also take that to perhaps ask for help and specific self practices that I may have, but I never articulate, as an example of that relationship coach's advice, right? Hold on to that this person loves me. I do that, or I didn't do that, hence why my last relationship didn't work. But now that I'm sharing it to my tribe, when I go to them, they can ask me that question, like make it practical, right? Did you remember to make sure that you hold on to that belief that this person loves me before you get into the verbal jujitsu with each
Yeah.
other, right? Before you start sparring with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I also think and see if I can articulate this well is choosing my tribe based on the future I want to create, right? The network of conversations I want to have. Um, what is it that what future am I creating here?
Yeah.
Because I think uh, human beings, and I'll make it personal for me, it's easy to get into the comfortable type conversations. But if I want to create a new future, what kind of new conversations can I have that's, you know, that's outside of my comfort zone, right? That's a, box above my weight class, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So I can extend my range of comfort in this new future that I'm creating.
What's been the most challenging conversation to shift for you?
Yeah, it's often personal, right? So for example, my conversations often around purpose, purpose driven life, purpose driven organization. But it's life doesn't present you with do you want purpose or not purpose in a black and white way. Usually is here is a ball of gray, do you want to choose this opportunity or not, right? That I think that's the time where uh, my purpose is tested because again, it never comes in a black or white choice, but it's kind of like feel into this thread of purpose, this thread of truth, and then use that as a way to guide me because it's so elusive. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any kind of sense to you. Opportunities never come in a very clear way, at
Yeah.
least for me. It's usually you feel it, it's kind of there, you kind of see it, and then you just pull that thread, and then eventually it becomes like, oh, in hindsight, of course, 2020, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So that's challenging. And also another thing that's challenging, you had said that you talk to your man to get the truth of who you are, right? The reflection, so you know that.
Yeah,
A lot of times I feel the truth is being delivered in between the lines. It's almost never the words they say. I gotta like dig and reflect upon and think about what is it they're actually saying to me, and what's the level of discernment and precision that they have in their communication to communicate to me what they're really saying. And that to me is challenging because not everyone have that verbal communication mastery. They just communicate what they at their best ability to communicate, but for me to discern what is the nugget they're actually delivering. Does that make sense?
it does. Yeah. I think, I think it's up to the person. We have a saying that is something to the degree of everything that you do in your life reflects you know how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so um, if you're if you have a willingness to look and notice the actions that you're taking, the words that you're speaking, and uh, what what does that produce? What results do those actions, do those words produce? And do they produce something that's in line with your purpose? Do they produce drama and strife? Do they and if you're open to looking at everything as a lesson, you're always looking at opportunities to learn and to see things that you can do to kind of level up and improve yourself. So that's kind of my takeaway from what I hear you saying.
Yeah, for sure. I gotta go turn my alarm off.
Okay.
So we can pause and resume.
So yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. One of many. I think we need to do more of these in the future. My next question for you was, uh, do you feel connected to your purpose? Do you know what your purpose is, and um, how is that a driving force in your life? And what keeps you on that path? So that would be a call, a conversation that I would love to circle back to.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was gonna say you leave that question, a three-part question, at the very end.
Uh-huh.
That's opening up a whole new conversation. So I love it. Let's stop here and let's leave this question as a cliffhanger for your future audience members.
Absolutely. Hey,
You're
thank you
welcome.
so much, CK. You have a great night.
All right, my
Thanks for
friend.
being with me.